It's great to have you with us from wherever you're tuning in from. For more information about Elevate Church or to contact us, head to our website elevatechurch.me and take us wherever you go by downloading our Elevate Church AU app. We hope this message inspires and helps you to take your next steps in your journey.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Here's a question. What would you say is your greatest physical treasure that you own right now? And I don't mean your spouse, I mean just like a thing. You know, for me, I'm thinking, one of them would be my Vespa. I've got my Vespa parked out there, beautiful little white Vespa there. One of my, I consider that one of my greatest physical treasures. Also feeling a bit smug because this morning I filled that up. The light was on, filled it up to full. $10.64, people. Yeah, come on. So that's good. And anyway, but the reality is that my physical treasures, things that I've treasured over the years, have changed. You know, when I was in primary school, the thing that I treasured was my bicycle. I had a red chopper bike that I bought from Flash Cycles in Midland. That thing had the banana seat. Now, I'm not going to even explain any of what I'm about to tell you. If you know, you know. It had a banana seat. It had a sissy bar. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to call it that anymore, but that's what it was back then when we weren't politically correct. And it had chopper handlebars with like streamers hanging out as the faster you rode, the more those things, woo! So I rode that thing with pride around the streets of High Wycombe growing up. Amazing. Then BMXs became a thing. And I didn't have the money to buy a BMX, so I converted my chopper bike to a BMX. Bright yellow spray paint, I don't know what I was thinking, with blue accents. And when I say accents, I'm talking about the foam roller Velcro bit that you put over the handlebars. Come on now. Anyway, then when I was at a university, I bought a Holden Kingswood HQ. Again, I'm going to say some things that some of you know what I'm talking about. 3 in the tree.
What's that?
You can look it up. Go to a museum. There'll be one somewhere. 3 in the tree. Yeah, there we go. See, Gavin and I are the same age. We're jiving here. 2 sets of bench seats, which legally meant my car sat 6 people, but I can confirm it had the capacity of seating up to 17 people. Very early on in the journey of that car, I installed a stereo, which cost me more than the car. Seemed like a good idea at the time. But look, here's the reality. My bicycle, now, many years later, is now in landfill somewhere. My Holden HQ Kingswood is now in a junkyard or landfill somewhere. And look, today if you were to drive up 2J Road, you would come across the Red Hill landfill. And it is full of stuff that people used to treasure. It's full of stuff that somebody hoped for, worked hard for, saved for, maybe sacrificed for, and one day when they got it, they were like, wow, my life is so much better now that I have this thing that I now treasure, which several decades later is now sitting in landfill. And I'm not trying to get you depressed right now, like, gee whiz, it's a great morning to be at Elevate. Ugh. But it's just this idea that we actually should keep a perspective that all of the things that we currently own will ultimately pass away. That's the reality. And when we acknowledge that, it causes me to kind of ask the question, why do so many people spend so much time just accumulating more and more and more and more? Stuff which most of that is going to end up in landfill. And we live in a culture now where there are people who are stressed and exhausted and busting their butts purely so they can accumulate more stuff, which kind of, it kind of doesn't make sense. So you're here today when we're launching our annual teaching series on God's principles of financial management. And we teach a series every single year. We come at this from different angles and really looking at what does God have to say about how we are to manage finances. And we do this every year for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's something we all have in common. God entrusts all of us with the responsibility of managing the finances he blesses us with. That's one thing. And secondly, you are not going to hear God's principles about financial management pretty much anywhere else. And in fact, what we're exposed to every day, much of that doesn't line up with God's principles and potentially can take us in a very different direction. And what we've seen every single year when people have learnt these principles and started to apply them is they start to live with less anxiety, less stress, less fighting with their spouse about money. Hello. I'm not saying never. I'm just saying less. And more joy, more peace, more freedom, and ultimately more purpose. So this year, we've called this series Jesus on Money. Jesus had more to say about how he wanted his people to manage money and stuff than any other topic that he taught on. So we're going to look at 4 principles that Jesus taught. Now, when it comes to finances, I'm a big advocate of surrounding yourself with a team of smart people, specialists. Probably get a good financial planner, get a good accountant, educate yourself, books, seminars, webinars. There's some good YouTube content. There's some very dodgy YouTube content. There's some good YouTube content. All of that I'm a big advocate for. It's what I do personally. But here's the thing. I place an even higher value on what Jesus has to say about managing money and stuff than the best financial planner and the best accountant and the best podcaster and all that stuff. Now, some people, particularly in the church world, when you start to talk about money, get a little bit nervous. Uh-oh. And here's what I want to encourage you. You can actually let your guard down because Jesus is not out to hustle you. He's not about to shift the goalposts on you. He doesn't want something from you. Jesus wants something for you. And it looks a whole lot more like more joy, peace, freedom, and purpose. So let's dive right in. If you've got your the Bible app installed on your smart device, you can scan this one. By the way, I've been saying this recently. New projectors are en route. So the supplier tells me again. Scan this, Matthew chapter 6. So while you're doing that, what we're dropping into is what is become known as the Sermon on the Mount. Now, historians are pretty clear that probably this was Jesus' go-to sermon and that he probably preached it in many places around the known world. So we get, in this instance, one of Jesus' handpicked followers, a guy named Matthew, recorded this particular instance of Jesus teaching his go-to sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, which the biggest idea, and by the way, this goes Matthew chapter 5, Matthew chapter 6, Matthew chapter 7. Jesus covers off a whole lot of stuff, but the big idea around the Sermon on the Mount was Jesus was revealing to his audience how the kingdom of God actually works here on earth. So regardless of what you've heard before, regardless of what religious people have taught you, regardless of what you might have been convinced of growing up, or just even some misconceptions, Jesus wanted to clarify that while you and I are here on this earth, I want to show you and teach you how God's kingdom actually works. And so he talked about topics that were everyday topics, how to relate to God, how to relate to people, how to forgive people, and he spent some time talking about how we should think about money and stuff. And I need to warn you, some of this might mess with your head because it definitely flies in the face of a lot of the messaging that we are constantly exposed to in our Western culture. So, this is Jesus' words. Don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and where thieves cannot break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your what? Your heart will be also. Now, I'm going back to the beginning. I hope you have some nice things in your life, some things that you treasure. I have a really nice coffee machine. Really nice coffee, a Rocket Espresso Giotto Tipo V coffee machine. We bought it for me for my 50th birthday. We saved for it. We had the money. We didn't put it on credit card. Louis, who met me because I couldn't put it on my Vespa because it's a bit of a unit, met me there after work and we bought it. And she said, oh, it's so great, because I'd wanted one for about 15 years. And eventually, and Louis said, well, babe, you only turned 50 once. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. So I treasure that coffee machine. And when my friends come over, they treasure that coffee machine too. If I make them a coffee, they're like, we love this coffee machine. Jesus isn't trying to be a wet blanket and tell us that we can't have any nice things in our life. His warning is don't make the things the number one focus
That's right. Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah.
You can't take it with you. But Jesus is actually double clicking on the idea that you can actually send some of it ahead. That we can actually invest in eternal things and not just be living for stuff that's eventually going to end up in landfill. And when Jesus talked about this idea of store your treasures in heaven, this idea of sending it on ahead, giving our time and energy and financial resources to things of eternal value, his audience would have known what he meant. They would have known that he meant things like acts of kindness, words of encouragement, and generous financial giving. And these things matter. Even when we give financially, it unlocks eternal treasures. Next Sunday, we're going to have our next baptism. And when we have that baptism next Sunday, those of us that are giving financially, we've invested in the eternal future of the person that's going to be getting baptized. We haven't just bought more and more stuff that's going to end up in landfill. Now, one more thing I don't want you to miss about this is we often think that once something's important to me, then I'll start investing in it, which incidentally can work that way. But if that was what Jesus was trying to get across, once something's important to you, then you should start investing in it. He would have said, where your heart is, there your treasures will be also. But he didn't say that. He talked first about our treasures, and then our heart follows. Now, stay with me here. I'll explain that. Monday to Friday, every single day during business hours, if you were to visit the Australian Stock Exchange building in Martin Place in Sydney, right in the CBD, in the foyer of that building is a big digital display which continues to be updated throughout every minute, every hour of the day of the various share prices of stocks held on the Australian Stock Exchange. And you will find a continuous flow of people that are standing in the foyer of the Australian Stock Exchange building looking up at that share price board. And the reason those people are doing that and giving time to that and using some of their hours of their day to that is because where their treasure is, their heart is also. If you don't own shares, you would think that behavior is bonkers. But if you own shares, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Some of you, who are my Apple iPhone people? Who are my fellow Apple iPhone people? Yeah, okay, good choice. Classy people. Did you know there is an app that's provided by Apple on your iPhone that's baked onto your iPhone and you can't actually even delete it, even if you wanted to. It's called the Stocks app. How many of my Apple iPhone people were not aware that you are the innocent victims of Apple shoving an app on your phone? And yeah, but here's the reality, and this is just me putting my Captain Obvious hat on. If you don't own stocks, you wouldn't be needing to use the app. But if you own stocks, you might actually be inclined. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What we see here at Elevate Church is the people that are the most invested, including financially, also tend to be the people that are all in other ways as well. Where your treasure is, there your heart is also. People who are not invested tend to be at much higher risk of indifference. Now, despite the fact that I don't own a car, which sometimes when I say that, people are like, what? Huh? I haven't owned a car for about 20 years, so come and talk to me later for lifestyle tips and tricks. But I don't own a car, but I'm actually quite fascinated by the world of cars. And one of the main reasons is I really like innovation. And right now, block your ears, Harry, right now there is a lot of innovation happening in the car world, right around the world, including China, right around the world. And what I love is when clever people solve everyday issues. No one's cracked it before. And when they do, you think, I can't believe I ever lived without this thing. So here's an example. On Louis' car, which is just a modest Skoda car, 30 grand vehicle. I'm sure many other vehicles have it as well, probably. There's a feature on the window wiper stick. It's not a stick, that you set it and you never have to touch it again. That somehow the sensors around the windscreen that sense the rain. And they turn the wipers on automatically, and they adjust the speed automatically depending on how much rain comes. Beautiful. Which means as the driver, you've got one less thing to think about. And you know, you've been stuck in traffic behind people that you're thinking they need to pay more attention to the road. Well, this is designed to help them. You don't have to ever worry about the window wipers. Brilliant. But here's one thing I'm asking the question of, and I haven't seen this cracked yet. Has anyone figured out how to keep the inside of the windscreen clean? Oh yeah. You know it. That stuff just builds up. Hourly, weekly, month. What even is that stuff? I mean, I actually don't want to know. But what I do know is that this film of stuff builds up, and if you don't do something about it, it makes your view of the road distorted. It's very hard to see the road clearly. I use that as a metaphor because I think the messaging in the culture that we live in about money and stuff can actually start to build up a film of schmutz on our windscreen that will cause us to have a distorted or not the clear view that Jesus wants us to have about money and stuff. So when we get into this, Jesus teaching about money and stuff through the lens of treasures in heaven, etc., he's confronting a thinking that's not how the kingdom of God works, and instead inserting this is how the kingdom of God actually works. So I really hope you're going to be here over the next 4 weeks. I hope it serves to clean off some of the schmutz that's invariably built up automatically around having a kingdom perspective on managing money and stuff. Because Jesus went on to say, listen, your eye is like a lamp that provides light to your body. When your eye is what? Healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. Now, Jesus wasn't talking about our physical, biological eye. He was talking about how we see, our perspective, our perspective on money and stuff. And he draws the contrast between a healthy perspective, which is like a generous, life-giving person, and then an unhealthy perspective. And these aren't necessarily new concepts. Like you read this and you're like, yeah, sure. You know some people who have a healthy perspective when it comes to money and stuff, and a kingdom perspective, and you know some people who don't. Jesus is saying, be this person. See things through this particular lens. So let me just share one contrasting set of perspectives when it comes to money and stuff, which I personally believe and have observed is one of the most important shifts that we can make when it comes to money and stuff. And it's actually one of the easiest ways I've found to know where people are coming from with two particular different mindsets when it comes to how we see money and stuff. And the first one is this, the scarcity mindset. Now, the simplest way that I've ever understood the scarcity mindset is that someone who has a scarcity mindset sees the world and the resources and the blessings and God's provision as like a pie. Let's call it apple pie. Nana's apple pie, Gav, you probably remember that. Good old classic Aussie Friday night at the Pomery household dessert. An apple pie that God's just got, he's got this much pie, and if someone else gets a slice, someone with a scarcity mindset, because they think this is it, this is all God's got, is like, oh bugger, there's now less pie for me. Like if something good happens to someone else, the person with a scarcity mindset thinks, well, now there's less for me. And so the person with a scarcity mindset sees everyone else as a threat. Everyone else as competition. You go to someone's home, they've got a nicer home than you. Oh yeah, must be nice. This person probably doesn't give. Well, you don't know that. And what difference does it make? Someone else having a nice home, God doesn't just have enough resources that if he's given someone else a nice home, sucked in, it's camp life for you for the rest of your... But if you think that God's limited to just having one apple pie and anyone else getting a promotion at work, anyone else getting blessed financially, anyone else having a better marriage than you, well, therefore, obviously, there's less for God to bless and provide you with. Well, that's a scarcity mindset. That says that God's going to run out one day. And if he's going to run out, well, I better store up. Because I don't mind if God runs out. I just want to make sure I don't run out. And the only person that typically benefits from a scarcity mindset is that individual. And I would put it to you that they actually don't benefit a great deal. Because this is a horrible way to live. Thinking that everything is up to you. That you're the provider. Or I'm the provider of my family. I don't want that job. That's a lot of responsibility. God's the provider of my family. I mean, sure, he might use my job and my business and other income streams, absolutely. But if I believe it all comes from God, I don't need to live with a scarcity mindset. I can start living with an abundance mindset. Because really, do any of you really believe God's going to run out of anything good? God provides. He owns it all. He's never going to run out. If he gives it to someone else, doesn't mean there's less for you. In fact, what I like to do is when I see God blessing someone else, I like to pick their brains. Because if they might be doing something I haven't thought about yet. Positioning themselves for more of God's favor and blessing. I'm like, cool. And then I just manage it. And then we benefit, meaning I'm going to be generous towards other people and other people are going to benefit, but by living this way, I'm going to benefit too. More joy, more peace, more freedom, and more purpose. And then Jesus continues, no one can serve two masters, for you'll hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. Say this with me, you cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. This is really asking the question, and I want us to ask the question today, Who's the boss of who? Yeah, it's a great question. Well, actually, I don't think you do. Well, in this context, yes. But here's the reality. Early in our marriage, I thought one of the best contributions I could make to Louisa's life and our marriage was to give unsolicited, wise advice. Like, Louis didn't ask for it, but, she's going to benefit. So, the loving thing to do is that I should regularly tell Louis what she should be doing. Now, just in case you're taking notes, let me bring you into the whole story here. It didn't go well. It never went well. I don't do that anymore. I now mostly only give advice if Louise asks me for it. And even then, I'm a bit slow. I'm like, this feels like a setup. Are you sure this is a real question? Because what used to happen is I'd give Louise some advice and she'd just look at me and say, "You're not the boss of me." But Jesus is calling us to ask the question, when it comes to money and stuff, who's the boss of who? Are you a slave to accumulating and stress and anxiety and feeling like you never have enough, that you've somehow tethered your self-worth to your net worth? Or are you growing into the place where money is now a resource and you're actually positioning yourself and thinking about it like that as something that God is allowing you to manage and use for his plans and his purpose? Who is the boss of who? Because money's a great servant, but it is a terrible master. And I know for me, I started getting good with money when I made the decision to start doing good with money. Like, it started to matter more. It started to be more about just me meeting my needs. You know, people say, "Oh, I just want to meet my needs," and it sounds very spiritual. I will say this, and I don't mean this to be judgmental, but if you're living life just saying, I just want to meet my needs, I think that's just as selfish as someone who's obviously greedy and seemingly only living for themselves. What about, it's like, I want, sure, God to meet my needs and my family's needs and so on, but I also want God to use my life and the financial resources he's blessing me with to do good for other people, to not just make this about me. And so this is my big lesson. I started to become good with money when I made the decision to start doing good with money. And it's powerful and it's exciting. So here's what I'm encouraging you all to do. This was just the treasure principle is what we've called this today. Jesus teaching. First, we've got 3 more. And we're going to continue to, during the week, use the Bible app and some of the plans in the Bible app on these topics. So every Monday, we load a new Bible reading plan into the Bible app. If you aren't already, you can scan this. It'll set you up to allow Elevate Church to be my church in the app. And then it's maybe like a 3 to 5 day plan. So tomorrow we'll publish that on the treasure principle. And it just helps us take a deeper dive and get even more of the schmutz off the windscreen, get even more clarity and more conviction when it comes to this stuff around the kingdom perspective of managing money and stuff.
We really hope you got a lot out of this message. If you live in the Perth area, we'd love for you to join one of our live experiences. For times and directions, as well as information, head to our website, elevatechurch.me. For those of you beyond the Perth area, we'd love for you to connect with our online experience, which premieres every Sunday via YouTube and Facebook Live, and on demand immediately after. And to partner with us to reach more people by giving financially, head to our website, elevatechurch.me, and also download our Elevate Church AU app.